program ROI. Yeah, so what we'll talk about that and use a simple case study to understand some of the realities and challenges of using some of these HR metrics. And then we will conclude with a quick conversation about best practices. What are some of the things that we believe are absolutely important that in terms of practicing and applying HR metrics on a day-to-day basis within your organizations? Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking forward to a power-packed and a highly engaging session. There will be opportunities for us to interact and learn and support each other on this journey over the next 1.5 hours or so. And please, I understand that, of course, from time to time, we may have technical challenges where we may be thrown out of the meeting room. Please do not panic. Just request to be readmitted. And the very vigilant program managers and team here will do their very best to ensure that everybody is comfortable and admitted. And please remember that if you don't know, the sessions are being recorded. So it means that at the end of the program anyway, all of you who are privileged members of our group will get the recordings. So you don't need to worry too much. Even if you are thrown out of the room, please note that the recordings will be also made available to you, okay? So look out for those recordings, and then you don't have to worry too much about the fact that you may be kicked out of the room from time to time, okay? Excellent. So on that note, I think that we are ready to jump right in and begin with the very first conversation around theoretical basis. What are the theories that support our understanding of the importance of HR metrics, and how do those theories guide some of our thinking around HR metrics? Okay, so let's talk about that. On the screen, there are essentially about 5 theories that, and there are many theories that could help us to understand this, but I'd like to just focus on these 5 theories that you can see on the screen. The first is certainly evidence management, evidence-based management, a concept that actually came out of health and medicine about the use of evidence as the basis for diagnosing people's problems in hospitals and for treating people rather than just treating people based on how doctors or physicians felt. Now, this same principle has crept into management practice, and we call it evidence-based management. And evidence-based management is about using data, scientific evidence to drive decision-making. HR metrics are about what? They're about data and using scientific evidence to drive HR and organizational decisions. So evidence-based management principles, practice, and theories support the importance and the use of HR metrics. In addition to that, there is also goal-setting theory, which talks about the fact that when people have clear goals that are smart, that are strategy aligned, that they are able to achieve better results. So we want you as HR professionals to achieve better results in your organizations. Therefore, HR professionals must have goals that are driven by data, that are driven by metrics. So again, goal-setting theory underscores the importance of HR professionals having clear metrics that measure their performance and help them to achieve goals. Systems theory talks about the interconnectedness of the different parts of the organization and how all of this interconnectedness is very important and ensures that the organization thrives and succeeds. HR is part of that system of the organization that is connected laterally and vertically with other parts of the organization. And therefore, HR people must have measures of their performance in the same way we measure the performance of people in production. We measure the performance of people in sales. We measure the performance of people in operations and so on. We must have similar measures and metrics for HR professionals and the work that HR does so that it truly integrates into that holistic system that the organization has. Frederick Taylor, many years ago, 1909, came up with the scientific management theory. And that speaks about the fact that, at the end of the day, organizations are made up of processes and disciplines that have to be managed in a scientific and disciplined way. One of the hallmarks of scientific methodology, of course, is data, is analytics. And so when we think about HR metrics are about data, about analytics, and about scientific ways of managing people and managing programs in organizations that are related to people so that we will get the results that we want. Finally, but not exhaustively, is strategic human resources management theory, what we call SHRM, which is really at the heart of everything that we're discussing. When I introduced Dave Ulrich earlier on, I spoke about the fact that he is one of the founders of strategic human resources management theory. And this theory basically says that human resources, that human capital of an organization is part of its strategic assets, and that the management of human resources adds to the strategic development of the organization and aligns and should always align with the organization's strategy, so that together, that combination of HR practices and organizational strategy will create the results that the organization wants. Again, HR metrics are important measures about the things that are most strategic that the organization is concerned about from the HR, people, and culture perspective. And of course, when organizations therefore use HR metrics properly, they are therefore aligning with this concept of strategic human resources management. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are theoretical foundations. And these theoretical foundations are designed to help us to see that the study, the practice, and the use of HR metrics are well-founded in research and scholarship, that they are rooted in evidence, and that it is something that we should take very seriously as professionals. So what are some of these important reasons? And a lot of them stem from this theoretical framework. So what are those things? If somebody asks you now, why should our organization move from not having HR metrics to now having HR metrics? What are some of the things that having HR metrics will do? What difference do they make? And I would share a few of them for you on the screen. The first is data-driven decision-making. HR needs to move from being fad-driven, being anecdotal. People just say, it is good that organizations do performance management. It is good that organizations use balanced scorecard. It is good for organizations to measure employee effective engagement. Oh, diversity is a good thing. Where is the data that supports all of these recommendations? When you have HR metrics, you will move from being fad or anecdote-driven to being scientific, data-driven. And the more data and evidence-driven you are, think about it like a doctor. If a doctor doesn't give you tests for malaria, for different illnesses, take your blood work and so on, can they just sit down and diagnose that this is the problem and this is the cure? No. So they need to actually carry out that scientific inquiry. And that's the exact same thing that you as human resources management professionals should be doing. The other important reason why we should have HR metrics is that they drive accountability and performance. HR metrics help HR people to be held accountable. HR is there trying to hold everybody else accountable, but is HR itself being held accountable? And is HR focused on performance, the real performance that matters? HR metrics will help to drive the accountability of HR professionals, drive the performance of HR performance, and very importantly, number 3 on the screen, improve the strategic alignment of HR, improve HR's ability to sense what is important, which is strategic thinking, and to align itself with those strategic thinking, and of course, to get the rewards and the results of strategic thinking. So when HR people use metrics, like some of the metrics we're going to be discussing and exploring, it enhances their strategic alignment. It enhances the strategic alignment of the HR function, and it ensures that HR and the entire organization, remember, systems thinking, is able to get the right results. HR metrics also, in addition to all of these, promotes benchmarking and improvement. And benchmarking is important. Looking out and giving yourself standards and saying, for example, in our industry, where are some of our competitors regarding employee engagement? Where are our competitors regarding learning and development? Where are our competitors regarding talent management? And it is absolutely important, therefore, to do what? To benchmark yourself, because it is through benchmarking that you're able to achieve what the Japanese call Kaizen, continuous improvement. You want to continuously improve, but improve based on what? You must improve based on metrics, based on data, based on benchmarks. And that's why HR metrics are important. And of course, finally, and not exhaustively, is something that we speak about a lot in the world of HR. We say that HR professionals need to learn to speak the language of the business. The language of business is numbers. And I say this every single opportunity that we have on this program, every time I speak to HR professionals, every time I speak with my colleagues and my clients. HR needs to speak the language of business. The language of business is numbers. And if you are speaking in pros and you are not backing it up with numbers, then you are completely disconnected from the leaders of business. You lose your credibility. You lose your seat at the table. And if you want that seat at the table that you certainly deserve as the custodian of people and culture in your organization, then you've got to start to use HR metrics. So we've talked about the theoretical foundations of this conversation. Based on those theoretical foundations, we have advanced a number of important reasons. So if in your organization, you were not using HR metrics before, or you were using them and not taking them very seriously, now these 5 reasons and theoretical foundations are enough arsenal for you to go back to your organization and start to implement HR metrics and put them into good use. Now, building on that, we're going to then talk about some of the key capabilities that are required. What are some of those skills and capabilities that you, as a HR professional, should have so that you can take full advantage of the amazing power and potential that HR metrics can offer to you? And if you think about some of the things that I have been saying since, the answers are quite obvious and they are on the screen right now. Some of those key capabilities, it's not an exhaustive list, there will be other things, but they consist of, number 1, strategic and systems thinking. Your ability to think strategically and to understand the interconnectedness of everything within your organization. Second very important skill, and I remember that 2 weeks ago on the Champions of HR WhatsApp group, many of you were there, somebody shared a number of HR metrics and a debate ensued about different aspects of HR metrics. And interestingly, it's like the person just served it up. We were going to discuss HR metrics today. And one of the conversations on that day of the group was around data analysis. Very important skill. The skills for analyzing data. And today we are in the world of big data, the world of artificial intelligence, the world of the Internet of Things. All of these nice, big grammar sounding, highfalutin language sounding things that all speak to the importance of data analysis, predictive analysis, and so on, as well as the interpretation of data. As a HR professional, you should also have strong business acumen skills. You should have strong skills for business acumen and financial literacy. Because again, if you are dealing with numbers and you are connecting those numbers to the rest of the organization, you must understand how those numbers fit in. One of the things I will talk about continuously on this program, and every time I talk about HR metrics, is that it's not just about calculating the metric. It's not just about visualizing it using a nice, fancy infographic. What is really important is your ability to interpret it, to connect it to the rest of the organization and to the world outside the organization. So don't think about HR metrics as just, oh, I calculate the metric, I submit a report. Think about it as taking all of that information in the larger context of business within your organization and outside the organization. Of course, you should have good presentation and reporting skills. So you must know how to prepare those nice infographics and visualizations. And you must know how to write those reports and present the reports properly if you are going to use the data to make a difference. And finally, but not exhaustively, is technology acumen. You must also be conversant to use technology, because a lot of the tools for data analysis today are technology tools. And we are, whether we like it or not, in a data age, in a technology age, and a knowledge age that is driven by information technology, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the key capabilities required for you to be able to use HR metrics effectively. There's one last thing I'm going to talk about before we jump into the HR metrics themselves. But before I do so, there's a question from one of our participants about whether they will get the slides. The answer is yes. You will not only get the slides, but you will also get the video recording of the session. Okay, so you will get the slides as well as the recording. So again, if you're concerned about the fact that you've been kicked out and brought back in, fear not, you will get the slides and the recording. So let's talk about that final thing before I introduce the HR metrics that we were going to explore today. And then we'll take a short break for us to interact and reflect and ask questions. I've just proposed a sort of model for how we can use HR metrics. And I'd like to share that model or that pathway with you. The very first important thing, and this is important before we start discussing the metrics themselves, is that first, you must have targets. You must have targets across different areas of the employee life cycle. The employee life cycle is the journey that an employee has through the organization, from recruitment to selection, to onboarding, to confirmation, to performance management, to reward, to career management, to training, and so on and so forth. You should have targets for each of these milestones, these interventions that HR has in the people's lives. And those targets must be in line with the organizational strategy. Secondly, you must collect data. So you must have a system of collecting data. When people go on a training, you collect data. When people are doing performance management, you collect data. You must collect that data and you must report on that data. But more importantly, you must also analyze trends. What do you see? What does the data tell you? You must analyze trends across time. Well, and what does this mean? You must say, for example, here's our target for the year. What's our performance this month? How does it compare to our performance in the previous month? What is the trend? Is our performance getting better? Or is our performance getting worse? Or is our performance plateauing? Again, you must be able to analyze trends based on the data that you have collected. The other thing that is absolutely important, if you can achieve this, we know that information is sometimes difficult to get. But if we can, as a HR community, start to share certain type of non-competitive information with each other, then here's what we could do. We could also compare with industry benchmarks. This makes it more relevant. So, for example, your company is in the finance sector, or it's in the insurance sector, or in the food and beverage sector, or it's in the hospitality sector, right? Where are the other people in these sectors? How are they doing in terms of those HR metrics? How do you stack up against the competition? This benchmarking will help you to know where you are and where you need to improve. The concept of Kaizen, the Japanese imperative. Very importantly, this is one that many HR people don't get it, and I want to pay attention to this one. When you calculate your HR metrics, please compare them to other business metrics. Let me give you simple examples. So someone says, oh, that our performance management system, one of the metrics we're going to look at is how many people are A-rated employees and what is the growth in the number of A-rated employees. And you say, oh, our A-rated employees have grown by 35%. You know what that statement means? It means that the number of people that didn't have A in their performance rating before, compared to the number of people who scored an A overall in their performance rating, has grown by 35%. Let's think about this. If you compare that to the revenue growth in the company, and you find out that the company only grew its revenue by 5%, what does that tell you? Can anybody think about this? Let me see if anybody is following me. You say that you did performance appraisals and staff performance has grown. You have 30% more people who have moved from B to A, and you're clapping for yourself. HR is doing well. Line managers are doing well. Then you compare that to the actual revenue growth of the company, and you find out that the whole company, has only grown its revenue by 5%. What is that indicative of? What does that tell you? Would anyone like to share your thoughts? This is a magic moment. Anybody going?
Okay.
Indicate by raising your hand. Go ahead. Yes. Abila, go ahead. Yes.
So it means that the company has only grown like in human capital, but not in revenue. They have not added to the revenue of the organization, which is the most important.
So what does that tell you, Avila? So what does that tell you?
They're running at a loss, something like that.
What does it tell you about that A rating that people got? But everybody got an A. 30% more people got A's. But somehow the A's did not
reflect
what?
On the business.
They didn't reflect on the performance, meaning that those A's are scrupulous. There's something wrong with them. There's something fishy. There's something smelling about those A's. They can't be realistic. How did you all get A's, but the organization did not improve? That's something to be concerned about. Let's hear from Amina. Amina has a hand. Go ahead, Amina.
What I feel is that my name is Amina.
Oh,
hello?
Okay.
Yes, Amina, go ahead.
Yes,
Yes.
that means there's something wrong with the performance contract.
Very good, excellent. Aha. Yes, tell me about it.
That means the people are being graded and they're not putting in maybe about what is going on in the organization, but they're not relating it with the total outcome of what the revenue being generated.
Okay, so there's something wrong with the performance contract. Many years ago, I was speaking to the chief executive of a leading company in Nigeria, one of those big companies that everybody knows their name. And you know what he said to me? We were in a meeting and I asked him, why do you need us to come and help to fix your performance management system? You know, he said that all the KPIs and targets that the staff have nothing to do with what is important to our business. Can you hear that? That they have nothing to do. So people are there doing KPIs every year. And this guy had been the MD of that company for about 4 years. They are doing KPIs every year, performance contracts, appraisals, people are getting promoted. And he says, that those KPIs have absolutely nothing to do with what is important. So Amina said, maybe the problem is that the KPIs, there's a problem with performance contracting. There's a disconnection between what people are being appraised on and what really matters. So this is why I said it is important for HR people, not just to gather data and collect it and analyze it, and put up the PowerPoints and the visualizations using Power BI and Excel and SPSS and all those fancy things. You have to analyze it. Finally, let's hear from Omagbitse. Omagbitse, go ahead. You have a very important contribution to make. Yes, Omagbitse, your hand up.
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to say what you just said, that the goal set for the employees by which they were being graded, it was not aligning with the actual goal of the organization.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. Thanks very much for sharing that perspective and concurring. And there could be many other reasons. Let's not, this is just us thinking aloud, but can you see the value of comparing your HR metrics with metrics across the organization? Because it's to validate it. It then tells you whether that thing that you are measuring in HR is actually the correct thing. It shouldn't be so different. If your organization is moving this way, the HR results should also be moving the same direction. If not, the HR results sound like a joke. And that is why it's very important to go through these processes. Olakunle's hand was up, it went down, and so on and so forth. Let me take that intervention from Olakunle, and then we will move on very quickly. Yes, Olakunle.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, sir. My own thoughts about maybe when you set a KPI, what are you actually looking for? It's very, very important. And if the KPI are not in tandem with the organizational goal, obviously you cannot expect anything different. So in terms of HR metrics, one, for example, the ill-rated, maybe the percentage is that 35. And when you look at the revenue generated by the same organization is a little above 5%, it shows that the rating is not in tandem with the organizational goal. So you cannot expect something drastic in terms of goal or the target of the organization. Thank you.
You're welcome. And just listening to you, Olakunle, I thought about another reason. It could even be that line managers are too, what's that word? They're too polite. People don't want to hurt people's feelings. These days, people in the workplace, we are so afraid of hurting people's feelings now. Everybody is very touchy-feely. So you find out that line managers themselves know that someone did not perform, but they say, oh, I don't want to be the bad person in the office. So everybody get an A. Everybody get a B, be nice so that, we will all be happy in the organization, whereas the organization is not performing. So there could be a variety of reasons, apart from even the performance contracts that we have explored. Finally, so that we will just move on, I can see your hand and I'm going to postpone that hand for a while, is that we need to use our HR metrics to recommend actions. Recommend actions. You should not just measure it. And when you finish measuring it, you present it. And when you present it, you analyze it. And then what? Then what is, you need to say, this is what we need to change. We need to go back and improve our line manager capability so that line managers have a spine and are able to manage performance properly and drive productivity. We need to go and change the performance contracts in our organization. And we need to get some experts to come and help us with improving our performance contracts. You need to do something. You need to implement it. Because if you don't, then it just stays on as a thought, as an idea, as a piece of information, as data. Data, if you collect data without action, it's what we call a She-Girl, the Nigerian comedian. She says it is aware. So you don't want to be aware. You don't want to collect all that data and not use it to make a difference in your organization. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause before we jump into the HR metrics standard. Again, of course, we're struggling because we started a bit late today in terms of time, but God willing, we'll be able to make some good progress. So I'm going to give us another 5 minutes, and I'm going to start with Amina. Amina had her hand up. Did you have a question, comment, contribution regarding anything we've discussed so far? I will take a few hands over the course of the next 5 minutes and try to respond as quickly as possible to the comments. So Amina, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I thought that the EPMS actually doesn't allow emotional for you to put emotions, because your performance is based on what you actually do. It's already written and it's in line with the something. So
you said EPMS. What is EPMS?
Sorry, PMS,
what does
PMS.
E stand for? Oh, the performance management system. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, but
management.
you have described, you've described an ideal. You described an ideal. Recently, we did a survey of HR managers, about 100 HR managers, and guess what we found? About only 5% of them believe that the performance contracts and metrics in their performance management system are objective. Most people have not improved the quality of performance contracting to the point where it is objective. There is still a lot of subjectivity in performance contracting. These are things that we have seen real life. So your experience in your organization might be different, which is great. But in many organizations that we interact with, including some of the biggest organizations in the country and everywhere in the world, you find that, our people are struggling to remove subjectivity and bias from their performance management systems. So it's still a big issue. That's why it still happens that people have funny looking, performance contracts and appraisals. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's unfortunate, but it's our reality. That's what we are working on here. So thanks for that, because Amina is surprised that if the performance management system is objective, then that should never happen. You are absolutely correct. In fact, let me tell you, as I wait for other hands to show up, I tell organizations that it is better that you don't have performance contracts. Don't have a performance management system. Don't say you have one until you are ready to have KPIs that are smart. Yeah. Olakunle says that HRM is meant to be people-oriented. What is my thought on this? Certainly, the 4 pillars of HR champions, and I'll read them again. I'll mention them again. Olakunle is HR as a strategic partner, HR as a change manager, HR as an administrative expert, and HR as a people champion. So being a people champion or being people-oriented is absolutely important. But here's a question for everyone to consider. All the people that are gathered in the organization, why are they here? Are they here for a tea party? Are they here to have a nice day? No. The reason they are here, the reason we gathered people in our organization is to achieve results. So that is why the results is the first reason, is the convening agent for us, is the convening point. It is the overarching purpose of our existence in the organization, not our existence as human beings. Depending on your religion, your faith, and your background, everybody understands why they exist as human beings. But when we put human beings in an organization, the overarching purpose, the prime motive, is to drive results. So our focus as HR people is to galvanize our people. Our people orientation is to galvanize the people towards the achievement of the results. That's our mandate. In doing that, we should certainly be people-oriented. We should foster a safe working environment. We should ensure that people are treated well and treated fairly. And that's why we have proper policies and so on. But while doing that, we should not lose sight of the prime motive. Because it is when we build an organization that is successful, that is sustainable, that is when the aspirations of the people and the people orientation will merge. So my take on it is that people orientation is very important, but it should be understood in the context of the rest of what HR is meant to do. Strategic partner, change manager, administrative expert, and then people champion. They all go hand in hand. And that's what creates a balanced scorecard as a HR professional. So if a HR professional, Olakunle, is overly focused on being people-oriented and is neglecting administrative expertise, is neglecting change management, and is neglecting strategic partnership, then that HR professional is deficient. In the same way, if a HR professional is only focused on strategic partnership and on change management and is neglecting people orientation, that HR professional is also deficient. We need to combine these 4 capabilities and combine them properly. All right. Thanks very much for that question, Olakunle. And I think someone else was talking about, yes, a comment about subjective and objective HR or people measures, which are absolutely important. So let's jump into it right now. The very heart of the matter, and I imagine everybody has been waiting for this. What are these HR metrics? So here's what we're going to do. Let me share a thought with you. In Learning Impact, we've developed something called the HR metric standard, right? And it basically measures HR metrics across about 8 to 10 categories, right? So I've tried to consolidate some of those categories into these 8 categories that you can see on the screen. Now, very importantly, I want to give you a caveat. When I show you the slides that have the different metrics, all I am showing to you are a tip of the iceberg. They are just examples, please. They are by no means exhaustive. I'm just sharing examples with you, a few examples. The second caveat is that as we share these examples, there is absolutely no way that in 1.5 hours, we can go through each of them one by one. However, you can be gratified to know that the slides will be made available to you, meaning that you can go through those metrics by yourselves in your leisure time. And what we will do as I show each slide is that I will engage with you. So fastest finger first. As I pop up a slide, the first person who raises their hand and indicates that they want to speak will get the opportunity to ask a question about any of the metrics that they see on the slide. Okay? So that way, we are able to go through some of the slides, go through some of the metrics, and learn a few things as quickly as we can. Okay? So look at the slides as I show them. And if you want to ask a question about any of the metrics on the slide, please raise your hand and I will yield the floor to you. Are we good? So the metric standard is across these 8 areas: workforce structure, recruitment and selection, onboarding and confirmation, performance and productivity. Vivian, you've raised your hand, but we haven't moved to a slide yet. Reward and remuneration, employee engagement and career management, learning and development, and finally, talent management. Well, Vivian's hand is up. So Vivian, we're talking workforce structure. Is that what you want to raise your hand for? So workforce structure. The HR metrics that are related to workforce structure have to do with the structure of the workforce. So on the screen, staffing rates by gender, staffing rates by age, staffing rates by cadres, staffing rates by function. It's possible that the organization is interested, has a goal of a certain gender balance, has a goal of a certain age diversity, has a goal of a certain type of employees, contract employees versus full-time employees, hybrid employees versus on-site employees, and so on and so forth. So these metrics really help you to understand the structure of your workforce. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about any particular metric that is on the screen? These are metrics that relate to workforce structure. Yes, Olabisi, go ahead.
What does it mean by staffing rate by function?
Also, for example, you may be interested. Oh yeah, so your cadre would be your grade, senior manager, assistant manager, general manager, officer 1, officer 2, and so on. But that's different from your function. Your function would be information technology, finance and compliance, marketing and sales, administration, human resources. So what are the numbers? What's the proportion of your employees scattered across different functions? It could be important to an organization. For example, organizations ask, what is the ratio of HR people to the rest of the organization? What is the ratio of IT people to the rest of the organization? Right? So that is staffing rate by function. I hope that helps, Olabisi. Thanks for asking that question. So let's move on now to the second category, recruitment and selection. The metrics in recruitment and selection speak, of course, to things that you want to measure regarding your process for recruiting people and selecting the right people. So you have external hire ratio, average time to fill vacancy, offer success rates, new hire confirmation rates. What do you think about these metrics? Is there a particular one that you would like to explore, to ask a question about? Please feel free to do so. These are measures. Yes, Vivian. Okay, this is the one Vivian was waiting for. Fire on, Vivian.
Hello?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I'm looking at the new hire confirmation rate. The new hire confirmation rate, there are peculiarities like in the existing staff, their growth rates. Their growth rate compared to, for instance, in an organization where we have staff who are waiting to be promoted to a higher cadre, and then the HR hires staff into an upper cadre, blocking the progress rate of the existing staff. It demoralizes the staff already in the system. So how do we work on this new hire rate so as not to bring about demoralizing the existing staff? I don't know if...
Okay, so maybe you're talking about two different things, but let me just address what the new hire confirmation rate is. When you hire new people and you give them 6 months or 3 months for confirmation, how many of them do you confirm? So you want to know how many people that you recruited were actually confirmed. And what that does is to tell you how good your recruitment and selection was. Because if you recruit people and after 3 months or 6 months, half of them are not confirmed, then it tells you that there is something wrong with the way you did your recruitment. Now, what you are talking about is probably something else, probably what we would call, and it might show up in one of our metrics. You're talking about maybe internal hire rates, right? Or it's a career management metric where you're looking at what happens when you keep filling positions with external people that come and block the people internally. Exactly, and that's a problem. And it does demoralize the people. That's a problem. So here's the question. So what are you going to do about it? When you find out that your internal hire rate is lower, much lower than your external hire rates, then it affects career progression in your organization. So what are you going to recommend to the chief executive, to the executive directors, to the organization to do? Can you show the relationship between that metric, a low internal hire rate, and employee engagement, so that by the time you bring the employee engagement results and you bring the career management results and put them side by side, you're able to say to your management that, you see, because our internal hire rate is low, employee engagement is also low, productivity is also low, so we need to do things different. Mary, you have your hand up. I shouldn't take it, but I will indulge you. Go ahead very quickly as I move to the next slide.
So, good evening. I would like to know more about the offer success rate.
Very good. The offer success rate is the rate that measures when you give an offer letter to people. You say to somebody, our company has employed you, your salary is 8 million naira, your salary is 10 million naira, your salary is 2 million naira. And these are the terms and conditions. How many people decline? How many people accept your offer? So your offer success rate is, because it does happen that you give offers to people and the people don't take it. So that tells you something about the competitiveness of your remuneration, of your brand as an employer of choice. Again, the question, what do you do about it? So the offer success rate is, you give out offers to people, offer letters, how successful and how do people respond to it? Olakunle, I believe you want to talk about onboarding and confirmation, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much once again, sir. In terms of the onboarding and confirmation, if we use our civil service scenario where
yes,
before you get confirmation, you need to write for maybe a confirmation exams. And we all know that the confirmation exam is not something that people will go write and fail. So, and also want to look also in comparison with maybe private organizations where your productivity will determine the confirmation. And some of the government agencies too are also using that model where your productivity will be a yardstick for your confirmation after 6 months probation. So my question is the civil service model of confirmation and the private sector model of confirmation, which one do you think is most appropriate? Even though
well,
the confirmation at the civil service is just a yardstick, but your productivity does not matter when it comes to confirmation. What is your take on this?
well, I think you've answered the question. Everybody acknowledges worldwide, and this is not a Nigerian problem, that the public service is not generally a very productive sector. We don't be, and it's not because I'm not saying that because I don't like the public service. It's because of what it is. You just said it. So if people are being confirmed just because they have been present and they have marked attendance for 6 months, that's not a good system. Certainly not a system that I would recommend. So what you should be every time you think about confirmation, you should be thinking about two things. Number one, what we call person to organization fit. Is the person well aligned with the culture of the organization? Does the person fit the expectations and the culture of the organization? And the second thing you should be concerned with when it comes to confirmation would be productivity. Has the person contributed towards towards getting results? And if in the public service, as you have described, there is no results orientation, there is no, people are more interested in investing. Oh, you showed up, you've been here. And that's certainly not a confirmation process that we should be using as an example. And I will say that the public service in Nigeria, I've said this privately and publicly, and I will state it, and everywhere else in the world, certainly needs to be more productive. The public service needs to have KPIs and metrics that measures their productivity. And when they do so, they will earn better, they will contribute better to our society, and all of our societies in Nigeria and beyond will be better places. Yeah, so that's my take on onboarding and confirmation. So let's move to the next slide that talks about performance and productivity. So who would like to look at some of these KPIs or metrics on performance and productivity? I know there are a few hands up who want to talk about some of the previous ones, but right now we are on performance and productivity. And there are a number of KPIs or metrics here. The involuntary exit rates, the poor performance improvement rates, the performance management process coverage rates, the employee upgrade rates. That's the one I spoke about earlier. How many people who were C have now been upgraded to A? And then the profit or revenue per employee. What do you think about these metrics? Questions, comments, thoughts about them? I know the pace is fast, but we are also trying to, it's a lot of content, Yes, Olakunle, go ahead.
Okay, thank you once again. Now, I will speak on involuntary exit rate. I know, I actually work in the next sector, and something that is very common is the word attrition, where people involuntary just exit the system.
Involuntary means we fired you. Not voluntary means you left. So involuntary means we fired you. So maybe it's the other way around.
Okay, it's
that you did not volunteer.
Other...
Yes, you did not volunteer. Yeah. Involuntary. We sacked you. Yeah. We asked you to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help you? Okay. Frederick, let's hear from Frederick. Frederick, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I wanted to find out, is there a particular formula for calculating the metrics we have on the screen now, performance and productivity. I know you can generate them, but this specific formula, retention rate has its own formula. Yeah, that's what I want. Thank you.
Yes, they all have, each of them has a formula. Of course, we can't go into the details of all that formula. I mean, and those are the things I said when we introduced this. So there's a formula. For example, involuntary exit rates. Let's use as an example. The formula would be something as simple as number of employees who were involuntarily exited. That is, number of employees who were dismissed, who were sacked, who the employer asked them to leave, isn't it? You divide that by the total number of employees who left in the particular year, and that will tell you the proportion of exits that were involuntary, right? So each of them has a specific formula, right, that is behind it, and we would only take one formula. We will work on one formula today, as a matter of case study, because again, it's just 90 minutes that we have. We do run a program for 2 to 3 days on HR metrics, where we will take every single formula. We would look at specific data of companies, and we will calculate it, and we will analyze it. And by the end of 3 days, the people will be HR metrics gurus. But again, this session is just a bit of a primer. And of course, we can continue the conversations on the WhatsApp group, and look at some of these metrics one after the other in more finer detail. Okay, so thanks for that question. It's very helpful, I'm sure, to other participants. So let's move on to remuneration and reward. We're making good use of time. So let's see. Average employee cost per remuneration type. Okay. Recognition program coverage. Compare ratio to industry average. What do you think about these measures? Any thoughts, questions? Okay, same hand. Olakunle, go ahead. I wish there were other new people, but go ahead, Olakunle. I see your hand is raised.
Let me just speak on the recommendation on the is it employee coverage?
Okay.
Yeah, some of these indicator do give sense of belonging to an employee that works in an organization. That I could remember when I first joined the civil service, part of the thing that were introduced in terms of reward system, it's staff of the year. And that staff of the year, you have a first position, second position, third position. Sometimes it might not necessarily means that maybe you need to give financial reward to these people. When you put their photograph in the office, or sometimes maybe our HR expert can advise the management that, okay, since where the management normally park their cars, that you can give 1 month slot to the employee of the month to drive in and park where the directors park. It's a way of just motivating people to do more. And if it's an environment where there is an healthy competition, and it will help most of these employees to want to strive better and to also want to contribute their quota. And most importantly, it's HR practitioner has that responsibility to make the environment conducive for an healthy competition among the employees, so that sense of belonging is also key, and for them to also want to do more. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much for that contribution. Let's hear from Joy or Male, and we have Mumuni. I would yield the floor to those two people very quickly on remuneration or reward. You have a question, comment? Go ahead, Joy. Go ahead, Joy. Can you hear us? Okay, so it looks like Joy is not ready. Joy going. Joy going. Joy gone. Joy, are you there? Okay, So let's move on to Mumuni. Mumuni, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I think in my own is a contribution regarding what Mr. Olakunle is discussing regarding the civil service participation in terms of remuneration and rewards. I think to a large extent, at the civil service process in terms of remuneration is something that is already fixed. And when it comes to rewarding excellence,
oh, wow. Looks like we've lost Mumuni. Mumuni, are you still there? Hello, Mumuni. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
I think it is
or
always
is it just
selected because you might not be able, because in the whole organization, you find out that you will not be recognized as such. So I think it is better as a change agent for the HR professional to ensure that with the recent performance management system that is recently being introduced into the public service, I think it is better for him to actually come up with a process how to improve the PMS that is being implemented gradually across board.
Okay.
Thank
you. All right. You're welcome. There's a comment here from Anne says CR is how you compare to what others are paying. That's correct. So compare ratio, the comparison of what you are paying to other people's pay. Look at employee, Mumuni, thanks very much for that contribution. Look at employee engagement and career management. So what are the ratings on the employee engagement and wellness surveys? What is the employee net promoter score? Wellness program coverage, average tenure on the current rule. How long do people spend on a current rule? Because if you spend too much time on a current rule, then it's indicative that you are not growing in your career. What is the attrition rates and so on and so forth, and cross-functional mobility rates. These are very exoteric kind of and very interesting KPIs and metrics. So I see that Joy's hand came back up and then it has gone back again. Sounds like she's having network challenges. Does anyone have any thoughts? Yes, hello.
Sorry, Bishop. The person whose name is showing as Joy is not actually Joy. I think the person joined her name, so it's showing as Joy. So the person may not know that you're talking to him.
Oh, wow. Well, what can I do? So
I chatted him up there, so I don't know if he can hear us.
Okay. All right.
Hello,
Frederick is asking, what does EEW mean? Okay, so EEW, very quickly, Frederick, is employee engagement, experience, and wellness. Yeah, so you want to do a survey that says how well are employees engaged, what's the quality of employee experience, and the quality of employee wellness. Yeah, so there are many acronyms that do this. The gentleman who is using Joy as his name, please go ahead with your question.
I really wouldn't know why the name is showing as Joy. My name is Bolaji. And
Bolaji,
Bolaji, so I don't know what is doing to my name that is showing as Joy. Okay, I think the internal IRA, can I speak to the internal IRA?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You have the floor now.
Okay. I think it's one of the last things you said, the internal IRA, which needs to be way higher than the external IRA, because internal IRA speaks to the fact that you're able to retain your employees and you give them opportunity for career growth. That when you're in your organization, there's room for them, because when there's room to grow, let me liken it to the last place I worked. I got to a particular position, or let me say particular status, and then I said to myself, there's nothing more for me to climb up to here, except I want to hijack the company from the owner. And then I had to tell myself it's time to leave. And that was the decision I took around December last year that got me into the current job that I joined since January. So the internal IRA needs to be very, it's very important, and it should be very, very crucial to the organization, because that speaks to the ability of the company to retain their workers and provide opportunity for career growth for them. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you very much for that insight. And very importantly, just to support what you said, it also depends. What is the strategy of the organization? If an organization's strategy is that they don't actually want people to stay for a long time, they want people to go, well, it's possible that that's their strategy. It's important that we link it to the strategy. Abitus says we should talk about employee promoter score. So it's a simple question, Abitus. If I ask all of you who are working in different organizations, would you like your sister or your brother or your child to come and work for this organization? What would you say? It is a very straightforward question. Would you like your sister, your brother, your family member, people who you love, to come and work for this organization? It tells you the extent to which people are emotionally invested in the organization. I remember someone describing a big Nigerian company many years ago, and a facilitator was having a retreat for all the staff, and this question was asked. The two executive directors, the MD and the deputy MD, were sitting at the back of the room reading newspapers. When the question was asked, the facilitator was shocked that not a single staff raised their hand. Not one staff out of 300 people in a big banquet hall in a hotel in Victoria Island said that they were willing and interested in recommending their family to work in this organization. The MD and the deputy MD almost wee-weed in their pants because they couldn't believe how much their employees were disengaged from them. So I hope that helps in terms of the Net Promoter Score. When it comes to learning and development, are the hands that are up about learning and development so that we can move on? Like I said, we certainly cannot go through every single one. So Oluwasomi, please go ahead. I see your hand has been up for long. I hope your hand is not paining you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, sir. And thank you for this session. So I just want to ask, in a situation where you are in a one-man company, okay, so one-man business, one-man ownership, and everything revolves around, of course, the management and a particular person, approving everything. Now, the salary for staff is not really very competitive. So staff are resigning so much because of that. And then you don't want to, you're not ready to actually increase that pay. So how are you able to, come to the management to tell them all these rates, that these metrics, that because it affects the attrition rate, that's as they go, attrition rates are affected, the engagement is affected, a lot of things are affected when people don't want to actually say because of money. And
my question
is yes.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Oluwasomi.
Yes, sir. So my question is that how do you use all these metrics to go to the management to tell them that you need to increase your salary? But because you know that financially we cannot really increase salary.
So if you cannot do it financially, then you shouldn't ever bring it up. That was what I wanted to show you. So if a company cannot afford to pay a higher salary, then it cannot afford it. What you should be recommending to the company actually is to continue to right-size itself so that it will have such a small workforce that is lean and strong. And let those few people be more productive and then I earn a higher salary. So the key metric there is revenue per employee. What is the total revenue of the company divided by the number of employees? And if the money is too small, then the money is too small. Then the question will be, how can you as a HR manager help us to get the employees who we have, however few they are, to be more productive? That is the question. And it is not just a question of a one-man business or a business that is owned by one person. It's the same problem with every business. It's the same problem with Nigeria as a country. How can you get us to be more productive so that the GDP per capita will increase? Because when the GDP per capita increases, then we will have a better livelihood. But if all of us are struggling with a small GDP and most of the money is being embezzled in corruption, then we have a problem. So it's the same for your organization. This metric, profit revenue per employee, it may help you to be able to recommend to your employers that, in fact, you are still oversized. That, in fact, the people that are going, thank God, let them keep going. That what we need is a smaller staff strength that is more productive, that can achieve better results. So why is it that we are not achieving better sales? Is it because the staff don't know how to sell? Why is it that we're not attracting better customers? Is it because we have bad products? we must find out what the reason is and deal with it. It's not really a one-man business or a one-company business thing. It's just the reality. That's why as HR people, we should have a balanced view. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump right to the end so that we can take our case study. Unfortunately, I can't take all the hands that I have up, but maybe when we take the case study, which is a pretty simple case study, it will help us to understand how to practically apply this concept of HR metrics. Okay, so I hope that Oluwasomi, you got the point of my answer. It's really the metric is profit per employee. And the question is, why is that profit so low? Yeah, why is it so low? What can we do to increase it? We can either increase the profit or reduce the number of employees. It's one of the two things. So those are the two things you can work around that will help you. So our case study, and we will conclude on the case study, is you've got an organization that has just spent 55 million naira on a HR program. It's a training program, a mentoring program, coaching program, counseling program. How do you calculate the return on investment, the ROI? This is one of the most controversial HR metrics. What is the HR? What is the ROI on the training? What is the ROI on the coaching program? What is the ROI of this new performance management software that you just invested in? Here are a few questions that you need to consider. Can all the results in the business be ascribed or attributed 100% to this program? Let me give you an example of what I'm saying. So you do a sales training program, right? Here's the question I'm asking. If you see an increase in sales next quarter, can you attribute all of the increase in sales to just your training program? Or are there other factors that contribute to the achievement of the sales result? Can we isolate and quantify all the other factors? And how much can we ascribe or attribute to your sales program? Here's what I would, so let's talk about this. I hope the example is straightforward enough. Questions, comments? Olabisi, I see a hand. Go ahead. Yes, Olabisi.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, I will calculate the return on the investment by finding the percentage of the amount spent on the HR program to the revenue of the.
So here's my question, Olabisi. That revenue, can you attribute it only to that sales training? Is it only the sales training that created that revenue?
I wouldn't. We will still have to do further analysis by comparing the results of that period to other periods.
Okay, but the point is this: there are other things that drive sales revenue apart from your training. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Exactly. Yes. So what are those other things? You have to identify them. So I'm using this as a way for us to learn how to use ROI. You cannot calculate ROI by just saying that we did a training. The training cost us 55 million. Sales has grown by 300 million. Therefore, 300 million divided by 55 million is 50%. Therefore, is 600%. Therefore, the sales ROI is 600%. If you present that to a management team that understand numbers, they will throw you out of the room because they will ask you, is it only the sales training that helped us to achieve 300 million revenue? Or are there other factors? And have you captured those other factors in your model in calculating ROI? Amina, you have a hand. Go ahead. What do you want to tell us about this?
Okay, I feel good evening, everyone. I feel that
good evening.
Performance management is about identifying the people that need that. There's like, as they're going on in their duties, you identify the kind of training they need. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assess those people that have been identified to need that sales training and that department, what level has that department brought to my ROI?
No problem. So here's my question, Amina. So when you have done this, are you saying that that individual, Amina and Bolaji, those two people, that it was only your sales training that contributed to their sales success?
It can't
Were
be.
there other factors?
Yes.
So what are those other factors? Okay, James, let's hear from James. James, go ahead with your contribution on this. James Omale. Hello, James, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. It's very faint. You're talking it's very faint. Okay. James, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. There's something wrong with your microphone. But your voice is not projecting. Yeah. Let's hear from Bolaji. Go ahead, Bolaji, on this question now. You've seen where the train of thoughts are.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think for me, to calculate the ROI, it has to be the sales revenue minus other factors that contribute to the growth in sales.
So what are those other factors?
Okay, the factors could be personal motivation, it could be employee engagement, it could be management decisions, it could be change in strategy of sales.
So let me ask you, so can you put a number to those factors? How do you put a number to them? So I see, what's his name? Anne says other factors, salary increase.
Some factors definitely
how do you put a number?
To put figures on.
Olakule says fishbone analysis. And so how do we get it to be tangible? Who is going to crack it? Because you see, this is HR metrics. Are you going to tell your management that you feel that it is tangible, it's not tangible? It has to be tangible. It's a metric. You want to justify this 55 million. So when you say you are going to minus something, what are you minusing? Yes, let's hear from
okay.
Let's hear from Godfrey. Godfrey, go ahead so that we can have more views. Olakule said fishbone analysis. I like that, Olakule, fishbone analysis. So when you do the fishbone analysis, each of those bones, how will you give a number to each bone? Godfrey, go ahead. Yes, Godfrey. Is Godfrey there? Godfrey going? Godfrey going? Okay, let's hear from, I'm looking at the group also. The chat message?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, Godfrey.
Okay, yeah, for me, definitely we can attribute every the GDP, or let me say the sales revenue for the organization at the training program alone. Of course, the other factors we have to put into consideration. For me, I will feel the other parameters need to be quantified. I'll find the average of other parameters I'm combining. Then if at the end of the day, if my training program has the highest, then I could say that, the training or my investment of training, if it's come up having the highest figure, that's when I can attribute the success of that organization to that training. But if other parameters put in place are actually higher, definitely I can attribute all to the success of my training alone. That's my take.
All right, thank you very much for that contribution. So here's what I think, that you need to, first of all, identify and quantify the result you are tracking. So you are tracking sales, for example, right? And then you need to establish what we call an attributing factor ratio. An attributing factor or ratio. And a lot of you have spoken about it, but the real answer is that it is hard. The real answer is it is hard because there is no data. There is no data. You see, if we had data built up over the years, right, where we had asked people, for example, so look at the fishbone diagram and the 6 dimensions of the fishbone diagram: materials, methods, motivation, and so on and so forth, right? If you take all of those 6 things, money, incentive, if you take all of those 6 things and you ask people over time, which of these 6 things, including training, right, is an important component of your results? If you have that type of data built over time, then you'll be able to get an attributing ratio. You'll be able to see that when it comes to sales, when it comes to customer service, 22.5% of what it takes to drive sales results comes from training. 18% comes from line manager feedback. 32% comes from intrinsic motivation. Now, if you have that type of analysis built over time, then you can take that attributing factor or that attributing ratio and do what? You can apply it to your figures. So this is getting very arithmetical, but this is how arithmetical it must become. So that before the training now, you can have what we call the attributable baseline. What is the current sales in the organization? Let's say sales is 300 million, right? And we said that 20% of sales is based on training. So we can now say that the attributable baseline for the organization is 20% of 300 million, which is 60 million. Then after the training, 6 months after the training, we now find out that, the organization's revenue has grown to 500 million. But remember, only 20% of that 500 million is actually attributable to training. So 20% of that is 100 million. So it means that the attributable end line is 100 million. The attributable baseline is 60 million. Divide that by the cost of your program. You now have 40 million divided by 55 million. And that will be the return on investment on your training. The key point I wanted to bring out from this is the concept of an attributing factor. This is where HR people always struggle, because they say, that the training, after the training, you got 1 billion sales. By the time you take that to your management meeting, your MD is looking at you and is asking that question. Is it only this training that costs this 1 billion? Are there other factors that cost the 1 billion? And have you incorporated those factors into your model? The way to incorporate them into your model is to come up with an attributing factor or an attributing ratio. Look at all the various things that cause performance to happen. And the fishbone diagram is a beautiful concept that you can use. And I'm very happy for the person who talked about the fishbone diagram. And then say, out of all these 6 dimensions of the fishbone diagram, what is the contribution of each? That data, unfortunately, may not be available in your organization. You may be able to get a benchmark from another organization or even an international benchmark if some people have done the research on it. Or you could actually just run a survey in your organization and ask your employees, what do they think? What do they think about that attributing factor? Is their success more driven by the business, the office environment? Is it more driven by the way their line manager talks to them? Is it more driven by the materials and methods that they use? Is it more driven by the training that they receive? And that could give you an indication. So maybe the feedback for the HR team, for all of us as HR people, maybe we need to go and do, before we start using ROI, we need to go and do some attribution analysis and do some research using our organization as a survey sample of what causes performance in our organization. To what can we attribute performance? And when we are able to do that, then we'll be able to calculate ROI and do it with full chest, very confident that we are not just sticking our fingers in the air and hoping for the best. Frederick, I see your hand. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. In fact, personally, this has been a challenge. But now I want to ask for, okay, the formula is no longer on the screen.
Oh, I just removed it, yes.
The attributable endline result minus attributable baseline results. How do you get those? How do you get them? Because this is mathematics. You need to get a figure or a ratio, a percentage in order to do. I don't quite get what you said.
Okay, so let me say it again. So let's say it again. Yeah, let me answer it for you, Frederick. Are you there?
Yes,
and that will be the
here.
last question I will take. Okay, so because we have run out of time completely, and we don't want to hold up everybody. So the first thing is to define the attributable factor. Let's just use a simple. Let's be simplistic, right? Let's say that there are three things that drive performance, all sorts of performance. It is their line manager, the culture of the organization, and the training they receive. Someone's mic is on, if you don't mind. So there are three things that drive performance: line managers' behavior, the culture of the organization, and training. When we do our survey of employees, we find out that training only accounts for 20%, according to the employees. That line manager is 60%, and that culture is 20%, for example. So here's what I will do. I will use that 20% as an attributing factor. It's mathematics. That I would, every time we do a training and there is a result as a result from that training, let's say there is sales, instead of ascribing or attributing the entire sales results to that training, I will only ascribe 20% of the sales results. So let's say at the end of 6 months, what we sold was 500 million. The attributable end line result will be 20% of 500 million, which is 100 million. The attributable baseline result will be 20% of the baseline, which was what was the sales before the training. So let's say the sales before the training was 60 million. So 20% of 60 million is 12 million. So the real change in sales is not 500 million minus 60 million. No, the real change in sales is 100 million minus 12 million, because that is the attributable. And where did we get the attributable from? We got it from understanding the different factors that drive performance, whether it is line manager, support, culture of the organization, training, methods, machinery, equipment. There are many things that drive performance, but we have to attribute a factor to training. And to answer the second part of your question, if you haven't been attributing a specific part of results to training, it can never be 100%. Then it means that the ROI that you have been calculating has not been correct. It cannot, because you cannot say that you did a training, sales went up, and it was only because of the training that the sales went up. All right? And that's the point of this attribution model. And because that's a pushback that we get in HR, a smart executive director will tell you immediately that, stop that nonsense. How can you tell me that because of that training, our sales went up? Do you know that there were other things that happened to get that sales to go up? It can't only be the training, my friend. Where did you learn that from? You certainly didn't learn it from Learning Impact, because Learning Impact would have told you that you have to look at the attributable result. What can you really attribute to training? All right? All right, so I know it gets a bit technical, but that's part of the reality. If you're going to speak the language of the business, then you've got to speak in these technical terms. Finally, some best practices. Measure what really matters. Don't measure everything. You cannot measure every single metric in the world. Measure what matters. Build capacity in the areas that we highlighted earlier. Learn to use technology tools, whether it's Power BI, Microsoft Excel, R, Python, SPSS. These are all tools. Very importantly, act. Because if you collect the data and there is no recommendation and there is no action, then all of that data analysis was a waste. And I've seen organizations that have been collecting data for years, but they've not learned how to analyze the data. They haven't learned how to interpret the data. And they haven't learned how to move the needle of their organization using the data. But every month, they keep collecting the data. They know how to do the pie charts. They know how to do the infographics. But that is not what is required of you. It is in the interpretation, the recommendation, and the actions. That is where you really add value. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long evening, much longer than we had anticipated. But I hope that you have learned a few things. We started off talking about some of those theoretical foundations that support the importance of HRM metrics. We talked about the key capabilities of strategic thinking and business acumen and data analytics and presentation skills that are important in using HR metrics. And of course, we also talked about some of the metrics across the employee life cycle, whether it was training or it was performance management or it was talent management. And we walked through some examples of these different metrics and what they mean and how to calculate them. And of course, we did that final case study that challenged us to see that you need to find an attractor. You cannot just say that because you did a training, 6 months later, revenue has grown to 1 billion naira. Then you say that training is responsible for the entire 1 billion. It's not true. There are other factors. And somebody gave us the beautiful model of the fishbone diagram. If you don't know the fishbone diagram, go and learn about it and see how you can use it to isolate the different causes of problems and success in organizations. Create an attributing factor and apply that attributing factor into your model. All right. And then we ended with some best practices. You cannot measure everything, ladies and gentlemen. Try to measure what is most strategic. And very importantly, try to do something about the data you collect. Collecting data without analysis, interpretation, and action, in the words of Chi Girl, is a waste. Don't be a waste. All right. So let's leave the floor open. I see a couple of hands. And I will just take that one hand from Omagbitse. It's been there since. Omagbitse, you have a very important question to ask before we close. Fire on.
Thank you very much. Please, this 20% attributable headline result and 20% attributable, how did you come about this 20%? And what does the remaining 80% stand for?
Okay, so I answered it. I will answer it again. So if you think about the fishbone diagram, it talks about the fact that there are different things, for example, that drive performance. So whether it is motivation, so maybe motivation is 13%. What do you think? Right? Maybe it is training. Training is 20%. Maybe it is your line management, maybe 70%, 45%, whatever it is. To answer your question, where did you get it from? Here's what I said. Here's what I recommend. Go into your organization and do a survey. Ask all your employees that out of these 6 factors that drive performance, how do they rank these factors? Then collect the data. So which one do they rank first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth? And based on that ranking, if you take 200, 300 employees in your organization and they all participate, it may give you an indication. You're asking them a simple question. Out of these 6 factors, which of them drives your performance the most? Rank it. Is it your line manager's support? Is it the culture of the organization? Is it the training that you receive? And by the time 600 people in your organization answer that question, you may be able to isolate that attributable factor for each of those things. The attributable factor for line manager, the attributable factor for training, the attributable factor for each of those areas. And whatever it is, you use it in your training, in your ROI calculation. And if your boss asks you, why did you use this number? You can tell him, we did a survey, we collected data. We have some evidence to support it. It may not be perfect, but it is better than not doing it at all. And it is better than pretending that it is only training that drives results. Angela, your hand is also up. Go ahead. Hello, Angela, are you there? Wow, we've got plenty of chats. Chat room is rude.
Hello, yes. Thank you very much, Prof. You I don't know how to qualify everything, but it's just superb and instructive. The aspect I want to get more clarity, you know, when you gave the formula attributable end line, result minus attributable. So I just wanted it to have a representation in figures, divide by cost of the program. This formula you gave with the explanation you gave here, I just wanted to plot numbers there so that seeing is believing.
So let's plot some numbers. So if the attributable is 100 million and the attributable baseline is 15 million and the cost of the program was, remember, the cost of the program was 55 million. So what is the ROI? Isn't it? Yeah. So the ROI will be 85 million divided by 55 million. That's 100 minus 15 divided by 55. That will be the ROI. The one thing that doesn't change is the cost of the program. The cost of the program was 55 million.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I was in and out, so I didn't get everything. I do hope I can get the video recording.
Always.
So I can,
the video recordings are always available. They will be posted on the group and you will also get the slides. Yeah, you get the slides first.
Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you for all that you do. You've been on this for so many years, I can remember.
Yeah.
And you never gave up.
Thank
so
you.
Well done.
Thank you very much, madam. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Frederick, I see your hand. You want to make a comment. I just want to say that officially we are at the end of the program. We can still have a few discussions. A lot of people have stayed on. A lot of people have exited since, the time has passed. And a lot of us are still here. I'm hoping that we can still learn one or two things. So Frederick, please go ahead. I don't want to hold your flow. You have a very important question. Your hand has been up for a while. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. And for the rest of us, thank you very much for your time, for your participation. Yes, it was a very intense session as usual. There's always plenty to learn in the world of strategic human resources, plenty to think and conceive differently. And that's what we are here for on the Champions of HR program. I just want to add a number of questions came up about how you can contact us and learn from us continuously. I think the fastest way is to join that WhatsApp group. So if you aren't on the WhatsApp group, please feel free to reach out to the program organizers from Learning Impact. They will be indicated as Learning Impact Model as the hosts. You can send on this platform right away your WhatsApp number so that they can connect you to the WhatsApp group, and then we can always pick up the discussions there. I am also on the WhatsApp group and so on and so forth. So we can have those conversations. We can continue these conversations on WhatsApp, so that we can release everybody. We have now done exactly 1 hour and 25 and 55 minutes. Much more than the 1 hour and 30 minutes that we had planned. Okay, so thank you all again. You're going to get a feedback form. Feedback is a gift. So please give us feedback on the quality of the program, how well we organized it, areas of our strengths and things we can do differently. Until next month, when we will come back again with another Champions of HR Mentoring program on behalf of my colleagues at Learning Impact who are all here this evening. I'd like to thank you once again and wish you a joyful weekend. In Nigeria, we have a long weekend up until Wednesday. Work doesn't resume until Wednesday. And we wish everybody a happy Salah and happy celebrations as we relax with our families and come back to work next week. Enjoy, take care, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye,
God bless you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye. Take care. All right. So there are some. Thank you so much. So my colleagues from Learning Impact, there are some WhatsApp numbers on the group. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Yimofe, Victoria, Angela, Abdul Salam, Adaku, Latifat. Ajele, Abitus, Bitrus, Bolaji, Chineye, Daniel, the two Daniels, DG, Fadipe, Okwe Sheiton, Stephen, Taiwo,
Thank you, sir.
Godfrey, Havila, Helen, James, Joy. There are so many Joy O'Malley's, 3 Joy O'Malley's. This computer. Moses, Obiajuru, Shina. Good to see you again. Yeah, Sylvia, Taiwo, 2 Taiwos, Tolulope, John, Ufoma, Yvonne, Adefunke, Babayale, Claire. Thank you all very much for your time and for your participation, and God bless you all. Yeah. Bye.